Today I'm reviewing a new electric family car. Oh good, I hear you all say, another faceless crossover slash SUV for us to get our heads round. Why don't you just simply copy and paste the last review, Brian? Because let's be honest, it's just going to be the same, isn't it? Except it's not. You see, first of all, it's from Kia, which means it's going to be quite an important car for us to know about. And second of all, it's a little bit of a radical departure. Well, I say radical, what I actually mean is it's not a crossover SUV, but a normal, everyday 5-door family hatchback, the type that we used to consider as a family car. Except it's from Kia, so it's not quite as clear-cut as that. Anyway, welcome to this week's road test review, welcome to the new Kia EV4. Please sit yourself down, make yourself comfortable in the house of cars. Now, it's been quite interesting watching Kia grow as a manufacturer since they started here in the UK just over 30 short years ago, and they've delivered us some excellent products in that time, especially when it comes to their electric offerings. Now, it really started with the Niro just not that long since ago, what seems like not that long since ago, but over the last 4 or 5 years it seems to have been a bit of an onslaught. We've had the EV6, we've had the EV9, we've had the brilliant EV3, we're about to get the rather lovely EV5. But the thing is, even including the Niro, all of those cars have been crossovers or SUVs, which obviously people now see as the sort of de facto family car. But that's where the radical stuff starts with the EV4. You see, it's not a crossover or an SUV. It's a 5-door family hatchback, just like a Golf. Well, a Golf that's been designed by Kia, because as we can see, it's still quite radical when it comes to the way the car looks, and it's available as a 5-door hatchback or as a 4-door fastback, which we're also going to cover in this video, which is quite challenging when it comes to its design. But again, that's what Kia's all been about, challenging people's perception, challenging the convention when it comes to family cars. But here's the question. Is the new EV4 going to be another surefire hit from the Korean company, or is this going to just stretch them just that little bit too far? Well, why don't we pop it through a House of Cars road test review and find out. However, before we start the main review, let's take a look at the main bullet points of Kia's new EV4. So the EV4 is Kia's entrant into the C-sector family hatchback arena, going up against cars such as the Volkswagen ID3, the Vauxhall Astra Electric and the Renault Megane E-Tech. It's also available as a 4-door fastback, which gives the company a foothold in the slightly larger D-segment saloon market with the Tesla Model 3 sets. 2 battery sizes are available in the hatchback, a 58.3 kilowatt-hour one and a larger 81.4 kilowatt-hour pack, which is the only choice available in the larger fastback. All cars are powered by a single 201 horsepower front-mounted motor. There are 3 trim levels available: Air, GT-Line or GT-Line S. And prices start from just under £35,000 and go up to just under £45,000, depending on model chosen and before options. But has the market shifted? Do we now just want 5-door crossovers and SUVs? And as I say, has Kia really just gone a little bit too far with a conventional, for Kia, 5-door hatchback and 4-door saloon car? Well, let's put it through a House of Cars road test review and find out. Now, I'm trying to be a bit clever today, I hope you don't mind, because I'm actually on the UK media launch of the car, and you're thinking, but Brian, you are filming where you normally film. That's because it's literally 20 minutes down the road from where I live. So what I'm trying to do is I'm going to film with 2 cars today. I'm going to show you the 5-door hatchback in its Air trim, so the more basic trim that you can get the EV4 in, and then I'm going to also show you the 4-door fastback model in GT-Line S trim. So I'm going to top and tail the range, if that makes sense. And I hope that's going to be all right for you guys. So as I say, we're going to start with how the car looks. Now, I've actually done a walk around of this car because I was invited out to Germany to see it when they first unveiled it, when I was working with Auto EV. So I've done a sort of like a design walk around of the car, a sneak peek with Auto EV. But here I've actually got the car to drive now and to do a full review of it. But I'll go over the design of the car as well. And of course, it sort of takes on Kia's opposites united, which always sounds like to me a weird football team, design language as they call it. And they always talk about these weird kind of things such as digital tiger nose and star maps and stuff like that. But it does sort of make sense. Well, apart from the tiger nose thing, which seems to be sort of phasing out a little bit almost. I'm not really hearing much of their talk of this digital tiger nose anymore. Star map, however, is the name they give to the sort of like the DRLs, because you've got the vertically stacked headlights here, but the star map is to do with the DRLs, which are this vertical sort of like star, well, like a star map, I suppose, down there. At first glance, there's a little bit element of EV6 about the car, you know, that more sharply pointed nose to it. So, you know, at first glance you might think, oh, it's just a facelifted EV6. It's not, but you can tell obviously it ties it in with the rest of the family, of the Kia family, through the sort of, you know, the design language they've got going on here. Now, this is an Air model, okay? So there are slightly different things with the Air model you get. You don't get the glossy black plastic. You get the more textured, natural plastic look around the car. So things such as the front splitter down here with the air dam, that's slightly different on the Air model, and of course it goes around the wheel arches as well, and you'll see that as we go around the car. Of course you get your brushed aluminium sort of Kia badge here. You lose out on little bits of equipment with the Air as well. You know, there's no forward facing camera with this car, but you still get radar guided cruise control, so that's the sensor for that down there, and obviously all the cooling's done down there, and of course these have got the active aero flaps that open and close depending obviously on what cooling is needed for the battery. It's got quite a nice, the way the shoulder line comes along just forward of the wheels there and then just sharply drops towards that nose is quite nice. I do quite like that, so that's quite an interesting sort of look to the car. And also I quite like this dark red they're doing. It's interesting, the colours that they're doing on the launch, you know, this dark red, there's a really bright blue, there's a sort of one called wolf grey, which is a sort of like a real pale grey sort of colour. Some of the colours that Kia are doing are quite nice as well on the car. The blue one in particular is really smart. But yeah, it's a good looking car. It's very much a Kia. Well, I think it's good looking. You know, I genuinely think they've hit the nail on the head with the way the car looks at the front of it. I'm not so sure when we get to the back, and I'll show you what I mean by that, and especially when it comes to the Fastback, but we'll move on to that car at the end of this section. Now, the hatchback is 4.5 metres long, which puts it 200mm longer than a Renault Megane E-Tech and a Volkswagen ID.3, although just a smidgen longer than a Peugeot E308. So it is very much a C-sector hatchback. However, the Fastback model is 4.7 metres long, and that's actually longer than a Tesla Model 3. So do you see what I mean? It's given them that slight foothold into the D-sector as well across both cars. Think of it as sort of, you know, Escort and Orion style thing, but with it being just slightly longer, so they can appeal to maybe sort of like the Tesla Model 3 prospects as well. Now, as I said, oh, I should also mention as well, the Air model is slightly shorter than the GT-Line and GT-Line S because it gets a different rear bumper. That's all it is. It's just the different rear bumper. That's another dimension. It's different. 3 trim levels, as I mentioned. There's the Air, the GT-Line and the GT-Line S. This is an Air, which gets 17-inch alloy wheels as standard. If you move up to a GT-Line or GT-Line S, it gets 19-inch alloy wheels as standard. And of course, because the Fastback is only available in those top 2 trim levels, all Fastbacks get 19-inch alloy wheels. That's what I was talking about earlier before. So you've got less of the glossy plastic that you get on the GT-Line cars. You get the more matte finish plastic around the wheel arches, and of course also down the sill section. But again, you can see that sort of opposites united sort of design language that Kia talk about, you know, where you've got very sharp lines and very sharp edges that are then moulded into sort of like more curvaceous style panels, such as here, this very upright, which is the bit I'm just never quite sure of, this more upright section here, this black plastic sort of like, you know, band that goes across the top of the car at the back of this rear window here. So you've got a very upright section there, but then it flows into a slightly more curved panel there, which then has this very sharp crease along there. It does work. You do have to see it in the flesh, and the more I do look at it, the more I'm getting used to, dare I suggest, the design of the car. I quite like the design of the alloy wheels on the Air as well. They're very Peugeot-like, aren't they? You know, that sort of square within the circle style of design. But it's certainly distinctive, it certainly stands out. But I do like the rear end of the hatchback, although there's one thing that bugs me, which I'll show you in a second. You get this big glossy black, it's not the textured plastic, this is the gloss black roof spoiler that helps with the airflow across a very aero efficient car. That does help this range, which I'll talk about later. Of course, you get the sort of like side bits there that again help with the airflow around it. There is a rear wiper. but it's tucked right up underneath there. Brilliant Kia. So you've kept the design uncluttered here, but you've still got the practicality of rear wiper because it's tucked right up underneath there. Brilliant, I love that. And this lovely high level brake light, this strip across the back spoiler there. Star map rear lights again, your LED rear lights, I love those. I love the way they drop down there. And then this nice sharp ridge across the back there, just at the top of the hatch. You do get a reverse camera on the Air model, and the boot lid itself comes down into bumper level. Here's the bit that annoys me. Just my OCD, you might be different. You see you've got these three little creases there. None of them match where the hatch come in though. That hatch needs to either come further up and finish there, or lower down and finish there to my eyes. I can't not see that now, the mismatch between that shut line and these three lines there. Why did you do that, Kia? Anyway, there we go. Reversing sensors, as you can see, fit there. Reverse light down at the bottom and a diffuser area there. Right, look. I'm going to show you the Fastback now. We're going to do a design walk around the Fastback now. But what do you think of the 5-door? I do quite like it. As I say, I like some of the colours they do on it. It is a little bit EV6-like, you know, and I like the EV6. I think they've taken a lot of the inspiration from the EV6 and put it into the EV4 hatchback. Prefer it as a hatch than I do as a fastback, and you'll see why in a second. There's still some areas that just I'm not quite sure of, but the more I see it, the more I'm getting used to it. But it doesn't really matter what I think, because I'm not buying one, but you might be. What do you think about this? Do you prefer this to something like a Volkswagen ID3? Do you think it's more interesting than a Vauxhall Astra electric? Probably is. Or the new Peugeot E308, a car, the revised car, which I'm going to be driving in a couple of weeks' time. Would you go for the fastback? Because I'm going to show you that now. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below once you've seen my thoughts on that. Now, by the power of magic and some clever editing, what I've now got here is a GT-Line S Fastback. So I'm not going to go through another walk around of the design of the car, but I just want to point out some differences to you. So GT-Line S gets the different LED front headlights. Same shape, same design in the sense of where they are, but they've just got LED headlights down at the front there. But you can see this area here is different. Of course, you get the gloss black now, rather than the sort of like the standard textured plastic. This is all done in gloss black, exactly like they've done with the EV3 and the EV9. This area down here is more body colour as well. And of course now you get the integrated front camera, which is this little wart on the front there. Same overall shape at the front, as I say, no panel work difference as such, but you can definitely tell it's a slightly higher grade model. Now the saloon is longer at 4.7 metres. It's 10 millimetres longer than a Tesla Model 3, but it shares the same wheelbase as the 5-door hatchback EV4 at 2,820 millimetres. So the wheelbase is the same. So it's all at the back there. That's the difference there. And it is quite challenging when you get to the back, but you'll see that in a second. But of course, again, GT-Line S, so we now get the 19-inch alloy wheels, the standard. They don't have a massive difference in ride quality. If anything, there's hardly anything between the two cars, I've got to be honest. But you do now get the little cameras there for your blind spot monitoring. And again, like the front, you've now got the gloss black trim down at the bottom rather than the textured black plastic. You still get this, well, it's not really the band that goes across. They're two separate sort of like blisters, if you like, almost twin sort of roof spoilers. You'll see them better at the back, but that's where that black plastic sort of like band is on the hatchback, and that's where it goes slightly differently. You think it's going to be a hatchback or a liftback, but it's not. It is a booted saloon, as I shall now show you. Well, it's distinctive. Jury's still out for me, I'm afraid. I'm just not sure. Interestingly, one of my contemporaries this morning, we were talking about it, and they said there was an element of Stinger about it. It was almost like a modernised version of the Stinger that Kia used to do. Not sure about that. These lights, they just seem to be quite fun. It's a shame they maybe don't come into the boot lid more. Maybe that's what it is. Maybe they're so right on the sides that just makes it, I don't know, quite challenging to look at the back. Not 100% sure, but again, it's the star map rear lights that you're used to. Now, this is what I was talking about. Can you see them? The two sort of roof areas there, it's not a continuous band across. It's not a roof spoiler as such. They're two separate humps in the roof. And as I say, you think this is going to be an actual sort of hatchback, but you've got the shut line there for the boot lid, which means that's where your window stops there. But again, GT-Line S. Now you only get the Fastback in GT-Line and GT-Line S. You don't get an Air trim in the Fastback. And so of course you get this gloss black area that finishes it off down there. Of course, reversing camera as you'd expect, and your brushed aluminium sort of Kia logo there. Now, the hatchback I'm getting used to. The Fastback, it's going to take me a little bit longer, I think. But what do you think? As I say, it's sort of, although it is the Kia say it's their C-sector car, they have positioned us slightly in the sense that they wonder whether they'll get some people moving down from that D sector, you know, Tesla Model 3, Hyundai Ioniq 6, you know, Volkswagen ID7, Polestar 2, that sort of style of car into a Kia. Would you, based purely on looks alone, or do you think, like I do, and I suggested this morning, that it'd be better off doing an estate version? Whatever your thoughts are, let me know in the comment section down below. Now, practicality. This is quite interesting. It's got quite a decent sized boot. Manual tailgate on there. 435 litres of boot space in the car, which puts it ahead of the Megane, which is 400 litres, and the Volkswagen ID3, which is 385 litres. So it's a bigger boot than both of those cars. However, like all Korean cars, whether it's Hyundai or Kia or whoever, it just seems a bit shallow there. So the volume's there, but in terms of the practicality of height, you do lose a little bit of that, if that makes sense. Now, there is some underfloor storage for your cables. Okay, there's a little well at the back there, you can pop those in, or they can lie underneath this floor. This floor also looks like it will drop down to a lower level, which you do that by doing that. But then it doesn't quite go down all the way because of this bit at the back there. And I'm not quite sure if I'm doing that right or wrongly, but that just doesn't seem to work particularly well for me. However, even with it in its highest position, we can just get the 4 suitcases in. This is the great thing with obviously doing a launch close to my house. It meant I could nip back and get my suitcases. So there we've got a big suitcase there. Then if we take a medium one, we have to lie that flat here. There we go. Then we've got one carry-on on the top of that, and the other one will fit down the side there with some extra space in there, maybe for a rucksack or so. So it does all fit. It just that, as I say, it's quite shallow in that boot area. That's the only downside. And oddly enough, for a car that's a bespoke EV, because it sits on the eGMP platform, there's no frunk on the car, or fruit, or front boot, whatever you want to call it. But I would think for most families' needs, it's probably going to be okay. Right, let's take a look at the Fastback now, because that has got quite a decent size of boot. What you can't deny, however, is the added practicality with the Fastback. Now, you're limited with the space, the aperture you can get in, but you are with any sort of saloon car in that sense, because as I say, remember, this isn't a hatchback, it's a saloon. That's 490 litres of space in there, so that's quite an increase. And the thing is, a BYD Seal is 400 litres. A Tesla Model 3 is 425 litres, excluding the frunk at the front, but it's still standard boot space, 425 litres. And a BMW i4 is 470 litres. So it's by far the biggest. And the thing is, although it is quite a narrow aperture, watch this, that's our large suitcase. That can still go in that upright position in there, okay? Then we've got a medium-sized one, which can go in there. Then we've got one carry-on, which goes in like that. Then we've got a second carry-on, which goes in there like that. Plus we've still got all this space here. So there's my camera rucksack there. I could get 3 or 4 of them in there. Tripod bag, mount bag, umbrellas, plus more. So in fairness, whilst the aperture is quite narrow, whilst the look is challenging, there's no denying the practicality is much better. However, rear space is superb. What's also really nice is the way the doors open. They're almost at 90 degrees to the body, so there's really good access for getting in and out. So if you're of limited mobility or you're loading child seats in, there's a big space here. You've got a really, and that's helped as well by that more upright design. So there's a practicality to the way the car looks. Right, let's get in the back. Yeah, there's just loads of space back here. That's my driving position, and I'm 5'8". And you know what? It's got, I mean, obviously it's got a flat floor because it's based on the eGMP platform. And I was thinking that maybe my legs are going to feel slightly pushed up. Now, obviously, if you do sit like that, then of course they are. But if you sit more naturally, they don't feel actually too bad. And I've got loads of headroom in here. Now, again, that's partly due to that design, that more upright design going all the way back. Obviously, people that are closer to 6 foot, you know, are going to be closer to the ceiling than I am, but it doesn't feel confined back here at all. It feels really spacious. So there's loads of space back here. You've got good storage as well. So you've got the rigid airline style map pockets on the backs of the front seats. You've also got the USB-C ports on the backs of the front seats as well. You've also got 2 vents there. There's also a little storage tray which you can hardly reach because you've got to really lean forward to get into it because you sit so far back. So that's very deep, and that will take a lot of sweeties in there. You've also got door bins, although they're just shaped for a water bottle, so that's what they will take, is exactly that. But you do also get your fold down armrest with 2 cup holders in there as well, and the head restraints are, you know, like a nice, you know, position as well, so for leaning back. Plus you get this sort of tombstone style, you know, the ET seats on the front like Kia do, so you get these grab handles there to help you as well. So in terms of rear accommodation, this is really good, one of the best in class, way better than you get from the likes of the Renault Megane. So as I say, that long wheelbase, that slightly longer car, that more upright styling pays dividends when it comes to rear accommodation. Now, if you've sat in any Kia's EV products over the last few years, this will look quite familiar to you. So it's very similar to EV3, EV6, EV9, what's coming with EV5, excuse me. So you've got 3 displays across here. It looks like 1, but there's actually 3 screens in here. You've got a 12.3-inch screen in front of the driver, the 12.3-inch infotainment screen, and a 5-inch central screen between the 2 of them for the climate control system. I'm going to talk about that in a minute. Very clear, very well laid out. Speed on the left, range on the right, plus a power meter there, plus the usual bits and pieces down at the bottom, such as outside temperature, your level of battery, your level of brake regen there as well, plus your odometer there. Okay. Then you move to this 5-inch display here. Now, there's a lot of people who have criticised this. They say, oh, you can't see it when you're driving along because the wheel cuts off. Here's the thing. Yes, it's the climate control screen. However, 2 things about this. First of all, if you press this plus sign there, what you now get is it moves across into the bigger screen here, which gives you much more ability to change things, you know, so you can use the big screen to change it. However, you also get physical controls to change your climate control down here. So temperature's over here, the mode is here, which basically means, is it going to feet, face or screen? That's what that means. Fan speed is there, and temperatures for the passengers that side there. What's the problem with that? Is that a problem? No, I don't think it is. And then your little ancillary things that you might need, such as your heated rear screen, full defrost for the front screen, auto and aircon, they're just little icons down there. So that's not a problem, I think. And then you can sync it as well between, you know, the dual zone climate control. So I don't have a problem with that little screen there at all. It's nice and easy to use, plus you see you get physical buttons there as well. Talking of physical buttons, you also get the physical buttons inlaid into this trim strip across here, which you've got the haptic feedback. So your home button there, your map for your navigation, which comes up there, your search, so it brings up your keyboard, to go into your media, so your radio and stuff like, your favourite button, and then your setup is in there, okay? Now this little star button here, this favourite button here, you also get that one of those on the steering wheel, okay? So depending obviously what you program into these will give you a shortcut to what you want. This is the other nice thing with Kia, turning off the advanced driver assistance systems, yeah? So on the steering wheel you get a dedicated button to turn off the lane keep assist, which is this one here. Then a long press on the volume control, I think it's just over 3-4 seconds, turns the speed limit warning sound off. I've just turned it on because it was off, so you turn it off by doing that there. And then you can program the rest of them into this favourite button here. So if I now press this, he says, fingers crossed, there we go. So I can turn off all the other ones here. So for instance, the driver attention warning, which you get this little monitor here, you know, for keeping your eyes on the road. If you don't want that on, you can turn it off, poof, yeah? And you can just program that menu into that favourite button there, and then have a second favourite shortcut in that one there. How simple is that? You get a nice big volume thumb wheel there to turn the volume up, but you've also got one on the steering wheel as well for the driver. Talking of steering wheel controls, they're nice and simple. On your left hand side you've got things such as the cruise control, the lane keep assist as I was telling you, plus as well your center dashboard here, so you can have it so it shows your ADAS systems, your trip meter or navigation. If you're using the nav, you can have that in there. And then on the right hand side it controls your media and your telephone. Simple as that. Nice and straightforward, I think. The dashboard itself, the driver display is really nice and clear, big font, nice and easy to read at a glance. You've got different drive modes, which we'll talk about without driving it, but basically that's the drive mode button there. So you've got things Eco, Normal, Sport, My Drive and Snow. Okay, and obviously you can the My Drive is where you program your particular preferences in. So if you want a sportier steering but an eco throttle, you can have that. You can change it how you see fit. That's it. And as I say, you've just then got your controls down here for your climate control system there. So it doesn't look it, but there is actually an awful lot of physical controls in the car. You've also got physical controls over on the door for your heated seats and heated steering wheel, even on the Air model. Then over here, in front of this area here, you've got things such as, I don't know what that actually does. Oh, downhill brake control, that's quite a clever thing. Parking sensors, parking camera and auto hold functions there. Now you don't get wireless charging with the Air model, but you do get 2 USB-C ports down there, and there is plenty of storage for your phone, so you can leave your phone down there. And this mat there is actually a rubber texture, so it doesn't slide around. It's not a shiny plastic, okay? You do get a slightly shinier plastic in there, but you get the rubber matting at the back there. You also get the 2, he says, fold away cup holders, so you can open it out to have more storage. I press the button to have 2 cup holders, and they will take my Big Yeti flask and Big Yeti water bottle. That goes in there. Plus you get good sized door bins, plus they're also shaped for water bottles as well. So there's a really good amount of storage. There's a really good amount of, oh yes, as well, there's a little bit in there as well to hide your polements away from your partner. So that's in there as well. So there's a good amount of storage, there's a good amount of physical controls, and it's all easy to use. That's what I like about it. Right. The materials. Got to say, whenever I've driven an EV3, when you go into the Air model in an EV3, you always know you're in the Air model. You go, oh, it's a bit grey, it's a bit bland looking, stuff like that. That seems to have changed with the EV4. This is an Air trim, and it doesn't feel basic. And I think a lot of it's to do with what they've done with the colours and the textures and the materials they've used. Yes, it is still grey, in the sense that you've got a dark grey, almost black at the top, then this lighter grey mushroom colour here. There's a little bit of bounce back on that. That feels nice and solid. I like that. Then you've got this leather style. I'm sure it's just synthetic leather on the steering wheel, but it's done in the 2-tone. That's nice, and it's a nice thickness. It's this squircle sort of design, so you get a really nice feel for the steering. I think the 2-spoke design on these is slightly more comfortable than the 3-spoke. The 3-spoke have the slight bulge on the button areas there that just seem to just hit the heel of my hand. I like the 2-spoke ones. You still got the 2 paddles behind the steering wheel as well to alter your brake regen. We will talk about that when we're out driving. And then you've got this sort of, I don't know how to do it, this plastic piece of trim there that's just at the end of the armrest, which is this mottled finish. Now, there's a little barcode, sorry, a QR code on that. This is what Kia do. They have their 10 must-have materials, you know, in terms of their sustainability message. If you scan that, it'll talk you through it and what it's all about. And that's one of them, this like mottled area at the end here. And it's really nice. I really like it. And the seat material, although it's cloth, it's a really nice cloth. I like it. It's like a tweedy style cloth. And you've got, again, the 2-tone, the light grey and dark grey. But then there's this little flash of neon green through it, which you also get in the doors. And of course you can change the ambient lighting as well to be that. And I really like it. It doesn't feel like a basic trim level. That's what I like about the Air. It doesn't feel like the EV3. It feels like they've moved up a notch with the EV4. And that's what I like about this. What else have I not talked about? Door panels, your usual stuff, mirrors and windows, don't need to discuss that. The transmission lever is this big wand style that comes out of the steering column. So there's actually, it's like a fixed bar, if you like, that comes out, and then you've got your stop-start button on it there, and then you twist it clockwise to go into drive, and then anti-clockwise to go back into reverse, and push the button then to go into park. Okay, the screen itself is your usual Kia stuff. Okay, and you now get Kia connected services with it, but you have to pay extra for that. So things such as YouTube, entertainment packages, that type of thing, you know, so if you want to sit and watch, I don't know, YouTube or, you know, Amazon or whatever while you're sitting charging, you can have that, but you have to pay extra for that. There's a subscription service, and it also comes now with ChatGPT as well. That's integrated into it too. So, you know, sort of, you know, helpful hints. You know, if you're driving around, suggest me a restaurant to go to. I'm hungry, I want some lunch. Is there any good cafes around where I'm? Obviously, if you're using the nav, it'll find out where you are and go, yeah, there's one down here and stuff like that. So that's integrated into the car as well. So that's a step up. And as I say, your climate control system there, you can sort of like, you know, open it up to be the bigger side of the screen, or you can close it down to be there, but you've got physical buttons there. There's really there's really not a lot to dislike about this interior, even in this Air trim, and it's really well equipped to standard. I've got heated seats, I've got a heated steering wheel. Okay, they're manually adjustable seats, but I don't mind that so much in some respects. And everything has got a nice quality feel to it. I could maybe turn around and say the door handles feel a little bit cheap and plasticky, but I could say that about cars costing double the price of the EV4 as well. So that's not something to really criticise Kia for in that sense. But good storage, good tech, good use of tech. It feels special even in the lead-in trim level. There's a big sustainability message, and it's all very clear and very usable, and there's a good host of physical buttons as well. This is a really good interior from Kia, a really good interior. And again, you know, in this market space, there's very little to really criticise in the EV4 as far as the usability of the interior goes. Now don't panic, I'm not going to go through another interior design with you. I'm just showing you this. This is the GT, I think it was a GT-Line S. I don't think it is, I think it's a GT-Line. Hang on, here's a spec sheet. Oh no, it is a GT-Line S. Oh, interesting, didn't see that on the badge. So this is a GT-Line S. So it's the same layout, but of course you get the different trim inside. You get the two-tone 3-spoke steering wheel, like I was saying. They're okay, it's fine, it's comfortable. I just think the 2-spoke one is slightly more comfortable because these just bulge slightly there, and after a long journey, I remember doing a long journey in an EV3 GT line down through France, and I just found after a while the heel of my hand started to ache a little bit because these come up rather than go in on most steering wheels. Other than that, it's absolutely fine, and your drive mode button's relocated down into the 3rd spoke there. But it's the same in terms of the layout. The only other thing that you get is you get a wireless charging pad down in the centre here where my phone is. This is all the same. The seats are the same seats but trimmed differently. The only thing I will say is that they're slightly more comfortable on the head restraint because they've got that netted, almost that empty net strung net thing that you do on the GT line on the EV9, which I really like. That's nice. And you get ventilated seats and electric seats with memory on the driver's side. So that's the other differences. The other thing you also get is a sunroof. Although it is a conventional sunroof, not a panoramic sunroof. So it is a conventional sunroof. So that's the other thing that you get. But I just wanted to show you the difference in the trims, you know, in terms of the colour scheme. It's the same dash, same layout, all the same bits. Obviously there's a bit more equipment as you move up the trim grades, as I say, and the bits on the doors are slightly different. But yeah, it's pretty much colour and a little bit of the trim and a little bit of the design of the steering wheel. But otherwise, same interior. Right, let's talk about batteries, range, charging speeds, all that kind of stuff now. You get 2 batteries in the EV4, a choice 2 batteries in the EV4, depending on the model you go for, okay? So if you go for the 5-door hatchback in the Air trim, you get a choice of 2 batteries. You can either have it with the 58.3 kilowatt hour battery for a range of 273 miles, or you can go for this, which is an 81.4 kilowatt hour pack that's in this particular car, and that will extend that out to 388 miles, okay, according to WLTP tests. But here's the thing, this car was 100% full when I picked it up this morning, and it was showing around about 370 odd miles of predicted range. They're really good, these, you know, in terms of Kia. Their eGMP cars are very, very good when it comes to sort of like, you know, the range and efficiency and stuff like that. So this is the mileage king, this particular one here, Air trim with the big battery. Okay. If you go for a GT line or a GT-Line S, you can only get that with the bigger battery, okay? And that's also only available on the Fastbacks as well. So you can't get a Fastback with a small battery. Does that make sense? Because you only have it in GT line or GT-Line S. Although you get the bigger battery, the range slightly drops on those cars, okay? You get 380 miles on the Fastback GT-Line S. That's actually slightly better than you get on the GT-Line S hatchback, which is 362 miles. Sorry, does all this make sense? Because the Fastback's got better aero, yeah? But because it's the GT-Line S with the bigger wheels, it's not as efficient as the hatchback Air. Right, there we go. Charging speeds on DC, okay, so if you're out and about, you need to charge up. If you're on the smaller battery with the Air model, then it's only 100 kilowatts. However, you would still get a 10 to 80% charge in 29 minutes if you were using a 150 kilowatt charger, okay? So you're still running about your usual 30-minute benchmark. If you go for the bigger battery, then the charging speed ups a little bit to just under 130 kilowatts, which means 31 minutes going from 10 to 80%. Higher charging speed, but bigger battery, okay? That's the downside. Both come with onboard 11 kilowatt chargers as standard, okay? So if you've got access to that faster 3-phase electricity, you can charge up from standard on an 11 kilowatt wall box, okay? But a more likely 7 kilowatt one, like the one I've got, means you'll be going from flat to full in 11.5 hours on the big battery and just under 9 hours on the smaller battery, okay? Heat pump. Yes, you can have a heat pump, but it's an option, and it's only available in the GT-Line S, which is something that Kia tend to do, and that's a little bit disappointing. Now, despite the fact there's two different body styles, despite the fact there's two different batteries, there is only one sort of mechanical setup with the EV4, and that's a single motor setup, front-mounted motor, 201 horsepower. So it will depend on the battery size as to depend on the performance it gives you. They're pretty much, you know, within a whisker of each other. 0 to 60 time on the smaller battery, because obviously it's a little bit lighter, is 7.5 seconds, whereas on the larger battery it's 7.9. You're not going to notice a difference, really, are you, in some respects, you know, but that's the difference between the two cars in terms of the performance anyway. I suspect there will be a GT model, a dual motor GT at some point. I would be amazed if there wasn't. This is just going to be something I think that Kia is going to do with this car, because it feels like it could have. You've got double wishbones up at the front. You've got a multi-link setup at the back. The ride quality is good. It's firm, you know, but not uncomfortably, not even, I would suggest, sporty. It's just well damped. Does that make sense? You know, you do feel like the little ridges across the road here, these little expansion joints where they are, you can just feel the, sort of like the wheels drop into them, but not uncomfortably so, not so that it would interrupt sort of like, you know, your overall comfort in the car. It's not as pillowy as something like a Citroen EC4, but I wouldn't have expected it to be, in fairness. Decent long wheelbase as well, so the ride quality is good on the car. What is very good, however, is the refinement of it. That is the one thing I've noticed driving this car. And I must admit, Kia's over the last... Well, the EV3 was the one I really noticed it on. I had the use of an EV3 for a week just recently. And it was the one car I came away thinking, gosh, that is a really refined car when you go on a long drive with it. This is the same. This really is the same. There's a little bit of tyre noise. Now, this is the Air model that I'm driving at the moment, so it's obviously on the smaller 17-inch wheels. I'm going to drive the Fastback with the 19-inch wheels on it, so I'll give you a little bit of a synopsis of what I feel about that car as a little bit extra on this. But this car that I'm driving now, very good. Very, very good. You know, it's got that sort of nice blend of just enough firmness there that, as I say, everything feels well damped, body control's kept well in check, it's not uncomfortable, but as I say, the only bit you could really sense sort of any refinement that's slightly just intrusive into the cabin and is road noise. That's it. No wind noise, no mechanical noise from the motor or the suspension or anything. It's purely just from the road that you're getting it from. That being said, it's not the most dynamic car, but then is that why you're buying a car like this? I don't think you are. If you're after a driver's car in this class, then you're going to be looking at something that I suggest like the Megane E-Tech or a Cupra Born. That's the two cars I would suggest you look at if you want something that's a little bit more dynamic to drive. But if you want something that's just going to be comfortable, easy to drive, easy to live with as an everyday car, lot to like about this, lot to like about it. I mentioned about the different drive modes. There are. They're obviously on this button on the steering wheel. Sorry, let me just turn off the speed limit warning, which you can do by that long press on the volume there. That is now off, so that's nice. And I'll turn off the lane keep assist as well, long press there. That's simple and easy. I mean, I'm always a big fan of the Renault Perso, button, presses the button. Something makes me think that's a little bit easier. Anyway, there we go. What was I going to talk about? Oh yeah, driving modes. So we're in normal. If I press it now, I go into sport. Everything starts to glow red. So the ambient lighting glows red now. You get the red on the dash. Put your foot down. Yeah, it's sharper, but it's not. It doesn't turn it into a GTI. Do you know what I mean? It doesn't all of a sudden just, unleash, like another 50 horses out of the gate. It doesn't. It just feels a little bit faster. I genuinely don't think people bother with that. The only other one you might choose obviously is Eco, or maybe you go into My Drive and set up how you like it if you want a slightly firmer steering, which you can do. You can have a slightly more sporty setup on the steering, so it's got a slight more weight behind the wheel. But the standard steering itself, I think, has got enough feel and feedback that I don't think you need to bother with that. You've got the two paddles behind the steering wheel as well. Now these alter your brake regeneration, depending obviously on what you want. Now you can set it up. Sorry, let's get past that learner, make sure they weren't coming this way, they're not. Depending obviously on how you want it. So you can have 3 levels, well 4 if you include absolutely off. So level 0 is there is no brake regen whatsoever, and the car will now coast. That's at its most efficient obviously. And then you can add in brake regen level 1, 2 or 3, and 3 is the most aggressive. Now let me go down here and show you now. Here we go. So that's on level 3. I come off the accelerator. You can really feel it haul the car up, and it stops the car, holds it. So you want one pedal driving, you've got it, okay? Or you've got a further setting, auto. So if you pull back and hold on the right paddle, it now moves into automatic mode. So the car will now detect, obviously, if you're coming up to something, or if you're using the navigation, it knows, I think, if a roundabout's coming up, and it'll start to increase the regen braking on it. So depending obviously on what you want will depend obviously on this, like the level of brake regen you can have. And you've got so much adaptability. Remember, this is the Air model. This is standard on the car, okay? The brake pedal itself, it's really good. You've got really good brakes on the car. I think there was a really nice feel to them. I've always preferred Kia. I mean, the Stellantis group cars, which is always the ones that I feel give you quite a spongy pedal. The Kia is very different. It's not sharp. It's not like standing on a switch and all of a sudden your face comes off. But there's a nice level of progression down on the pedal. So it's got a really nice retardation, when you stand on the pedal. And that's the nice thing with the Kia controls. It all feels balanced. So the throttle pedal has the same sort of weight to the brake pedal. The steering feels, in proportion to the weight behind the rest of the controls that you would use, such as the accelerator and brake. And that's the nice thing with the Kias. They always just seem to get that balance right, which I really like about them. The other thing you notice being in a Kia, which is a little bit weird, because obviously the dashboard being the same as you've seen in the EV6, the EV3 and the EV9 things, you're sitting lower down because you're in a normal 5-door hatchback. It's almost a little weird thing that you just sort of, it's weird just to get into that. You get into the car and you go, oh, I'm not sitting higher up, I'm not in a more upright position, I'm in a normal car, but I'm driving a Kia behind this dashboard. That's the thing that your brain has to quickly adjust to, when you move into the EV4. which is nice. You know, it all works well in this level of car. There's good visibility out of it as well. Part of the that more upright design I was talking about earlier, you know, means you've got good over the shoulder visibility. So you're coming at a tighter junction, you're looking behind you, you've got good visibility because the rear pillars are more upright, so there's a lot more window behind you, so you can see it. And there's good visibility down the flanks of the car thanks to the door mirrors. You do lose a little bit at the front though, obviously, because that nose just drops away quite sharply, and that's one of the things you find that obviously when you're sitting in the car, it being a more regular hatchback, you don't quite have the view forward that you do in, say, an EV3 or an EV6 or an EV9, obviously. Or you will get in the EV5, which is their next EV product, which I'll be driving later this year as well. So what I'm trying to say is, it's not the most exciting of cars, it's not the most dynamic of cars, but dare I suggest, I don't think that's what Kia was aiming for with this car. I wouldn't be shocked if there is a hotter version, a GT version. I wouldn't be shocked at all if we saw that, and then that's another discussion for then. But what we're left with is a standard regular 5-door family hatchback that's comfortable, that's quiet, that's easy to drive, that's easy to live with. It's not particularly exciting, but my argument would be, does it need to be exciting? It's spacious, it's well equipped, it's comfortable. What's not to like? The fact that it's a normal, regular 5-door hatchback sort of just sweetens it a little bit as well. I like this. Kia have done it again. So how much is it? Well, if you go for an Air trim like this with the smaller battery, which remember still gives you 270 miles of range, in reality you're still looking at 250 miles plus, it is 34,695. Now I don't think that's too bad considering the sort of space that you get inside the car, considering, as I say, the Air trim is not exactly a basic specification either. So I think that's quite good. If you need more in terms of range, however, remember you can have the Air with the bigger battery, which this car that I'm driving is, and that is 37,695 to move up to the Air with the bigger battery. If you do want more spec, however, you move up to the GT line. Now Kia here in the UK reckon the GT line will be their big seller, so that mid-ranking trim spec which only comes with the bigger battery, that's going to just sneak in below the £40,000 bracket at 39,395. So that's what you're looking at for a GT line, okay? If you need more than that, then you move up to a GT-Line S, and that is 44,795. So there's quite a big jump between the GT line and the GT-Line S. Now I'm going to deal with the Fastback prices separately, okay? Because they are slightly different to what you get, and you know, from in terms of the price point from where the hatchback is. But of course, remember it's a Kia, so you get your Kia warranty with that, which is obviously the 7-year warranty that Kia has been renowned for, and residuals on Kia EVs tend to be quite good. So overall costs on the car, I reckon, are going to be pretty on par with what you would expect for this level of car. Now the prices are a bit different with the Fastback because you don't get an Air trim, okay? And this is a little bit, I think they're just edging into a price territory where, you know, that single motor, just over 200 horsepower, the sort of, you know, the battery charging, you know, that's not quite on a par with some other cars, but the price is starting to creep in, you know, with that Tesla Model 3 is, you know, Polestar 2, that type of car. I think they need to be a little bit careful. So anyway, Fastback only comes in the 2 trim levels, GT line or GT-Line S, okay? So a GT line is going to cost you £40,895, okay? So that's pretty much the car I would say. If you want the Fastback, just go for that, because if you want a GT-Line S, it's 45,395. And I just think at £45,000, maybe there are some better options out there, you know. But of course, these prices are correct at time of filming, and as I say, at time of filming, there's no introduction of an Air model or the smaller battery. Both Fastbacks get the bigger battery, and of course, they get the usual Kia 7-year warranty as standard. But yeah, price-wise, it's starting to get a little bit pricey, I think. Right, competition. Well, this is quite interesting because obviously you've got two different body styles, which means that it might appeal to two different styles of customers in two different markets, depending how you see the car. So if we take the 5-door hatchback, that's very much a C-segment hatch. And despite the fact everyone's love of SUVs and crossovers now, there's still quite a few cars that you could choose within this C-sector family hatchback market. Of course, there's the Volkswagen ID3, which is the big one, you know, the sort of like electric Golf, if you like. And within Volkswagen Group, you've also got Cupra with the Cupra Born, which is probably the one I would choose of those two. It's just a bit more interesting, a bit more interesting to look at, a bit sportier, a bit nicer to drive. So you've got those two cars. Of course, my favourite in this market is the Renault Megane E-Tech. Now, when I was with Auto EV, I ran a Megane E-Tech as a long-term car. Not quite as big in the back, boot space is maybe a bit more dynamic in some respects. So if you're a driver, to me, that's the driver's choice, and I really like Renault electric cars. I think they're, you know, they're really, really good in terms of their overall usability and ease of use as an everyday style of car. So there's the Megane E-Tech to consider as well. There's also MG to consider with the MG4. That's still a really good car and offers brilliant value for money. And MG is sort of like changing, you know, sort of like certain models within the range, but the MG4 is still a real good value proposition, I think, as well. And of course, there's other propositions from China as well. BYD, they've got the Dolphin. It always feels like a slightly smaller car, the Dolphin, to me, but it isn't. And, you know, in terms of its value for money, BYD aren't at the cheaper end, dare I suggest, of the Chinese manufacturers, but the Dolphin does offer good value for money. But Stellantis have quite a showing here as well, the group of brands under the Stellantis umbrella, if you like. So of course you've got the Vauxhall Astra Electric, which you can have as a 5-door or as an estate as well, remember. So that gives you the estate car body style if you're after that. And as well as the Astra, you've also got from Peugeot the E308, which is available as a 5-door hatch or an estate. And I'm going to be driving the revised E308 in a couple of weeks' time. So that's a car obviously that's going to change, and that's a car that's going to be competitive with the EV4. And of course from Citroën, we've also got the EC4, which is the choice if you're after something comfortable, because that really is Citroën's forte. So like I say, despite the fact that we've got a love for SUVs and crossovers, there's still a lot of choice available to you within the 5-door family hatchback sector. Now, the Fastback, let's discuss that. Now, like I said, competition for the Fastback might be slightly different depending how you view the car, because as I say, because of the size of it, and because the data suggests its price starting point as well, you might going to consider this against D-segment saloons rather than those C-sector hatchbacks that the 5-door competes with. So maybe things such as the Tesla Model 3, of course, naturally you're going to think about it against something like that. The BYD Seal, that's a great car, and that's a car that I think you'll consider. Another good value for money car that's come in from China just recently as well, of course, is MG with the IM5, that saloon car. That offers a huge amount for this level of money. The Mercedes-Benz CLA with EQ technology. Now, I road tested that car and reviewed it for Auto EV before I disappeared. And that car starts at £45,000, 500-mile range, wearing a Mercedes-Benz badge. Same price as this. Or a GT-Line S, one of these. So maybe you might be thinking it as that. Mazda 6, a little bit pricier, but again, you know, it's still a car you might consider. But I think that's a bit like the Volkswagen ID7. That is at the top end of the D sector class. So would you consider it as a competitor for this? I don't know. Maybe it would depend on your monthlies. Maybe it would depend on your company car list. Who knows? Polestar 2, BMW i4, Hyundai Ioniq 6, potentially yes. You know, so it just depends how you see the car as to whether or not you see it as competing with those C-sector hatches still, or crossovers, or whether or not you would consider it against something like the Tesla, the Hyundai, the BMW, the MG, that you see what I'm saying. Once again, Kia have delivered us another brilliant electric car. You'd have been a bit shocked if I'd told you otherwise. But it's not their best effort. There are elements of the electrical architecture and charging speeds and things that I thought might have been a little bit better, especially coming from Kia. And it does get quite pricey when you move into the higher trim levels, especially on the Fastback model, which has slightly questionable styling depending on your tastes. But nevertheless, what we're left with is a good car. Think of it like this, it's a bit like Walkers and their crisps range. Yes, there are more daring flavours within the Walkers range, just like there are more daring and unconventional cars within the Kia range. But every now and again, all we want is a packet of ready salted, and that's exactly what the EV4 is. It's a straightforward, conventional 5 or 4 door family car that's going to satisfy what most people want or need. And dare I suggest, every now and again, isn't it just nice to have a packet of ready salted crisps? Thank you for watching another road test review here on House of Cars. As always, please make sure you are subscribed to the House of Cars channel. And then once you've done that, make sure you've also turned on your notifications so that you don't miss the next one when it's finally uploaded and it's gone live. If you've enjoyed this week's review, and I hope you have, make sure you give it a little thumbs up. And of course, don't forget, leave me your thoughts in the comment section down below. What do you think of Kia's new EV4? 5-door hatchback, 4-door fastback? Neither. Would you rather have an ID3 or an EV3? Let me know your thoughts down below in the comment section. Now remember, if you want to follow me on social media, I'm across on Instagram and it's at House of Cars 1973. So if you'd like to follow me there, I would certainly appreciate it. And remember, whether or not it is a new car or an old car, a slow car or a fast car, a small car or a large car, you'll find them all here in the House of Cars. Thank you again for watching. Thank you for your continued support. I'll see you again soon.